So thank you, Jocelyn, for that beautiful talk and ceremony. And I'm gonna try to connect your talk with the talk that we're gonna have now.
Awesome.
So I would like to start here in the way of knowing, because the way of knowing in Western culture, we call that epistemology. And somehow Western epistemology is a colonial imperial epistemology that has been imposed and globalized in the world, and that doesn't accept other ways of thinking and knowing. So I think it's really interesting what you did here, because these are the myths of Western knowledge. Here, these three, like basically the linear thought, and then this is the way Western knowledge understand history, and understand history as a process that is they call progress. And here, this is primitive people for them, and here is European people that they call civilized. So basically, they see history as an arrow, and then the end of that arrow is them. That's the way to understand history, and this is one of the myths that we need to address. The other one is this one, because they created disciplines, and disciplines basically what they do are frames to understand knowledge. So then, instead having a holistic way to understand life, everything, like what we live, like where are we standing, what we think, Western knowledge always divides, So we always are understanding in division. So this could be science, this is history, this is politics, this is economy, and they are not connected. There is no circle. And they are not only not connected, but they are organized in hierarchy. So basically, when we think of all the education that we got, the institutions in which we work, and the institutions that govern over us, are institutions that were built in modernity, and there are constructions that came from Europe and that have been imposed and globalized. Thinking on that, I was thinking, how can we overcome that? And then somehow, one of the ways of overcoming that is the circle, and different people that we are part of the circle. So that's why today I invite the speakers that are going to introduce themselves. They have different disciplines, they have different ethnicity, race, as well as me, as well as some of you. And somehow what I want is to understand that there is not only one truth, like we have different perspectives, because we are standing in different places. So, so when I look to this point, but I'm standing here, it's not the same when I'm standing here. So, there's always discussions, but it's because we are not standing in the same place. So if we acknowledge that knowledge has location, and we start locating knowledge, then we can start creating a new universal knowledge that I will call pluriversalism. Because one of the problems of Western knowledge is that it's universal and it's heterogenic. So basically it's only from one source, and it's only one truth, and it's not pluriversal, like inviting other people to also have their own epistemology, their own ways of knowing, and inviting people to be different, because we don't need to be equal, we don't need to be the same. That's BS.
Yes.
Yeah. So Carolyn, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Carolyn Simon. I am a Bachelor of Social Work student at Carleton University. I originate from Elsipogtog First Nation in New Brunswick.
So sorry.
It's better than Neil Ground. Anything's better than Neil Ground.
I'm sorry, I like to tease her because my children are from Eel Ground. She's Mi'kmaq too.
Yeah.
I try not to hold it against my kids. Just kidding.
I'm Mi'kmaq, like I said, from the Elsipogtog First Nations band, and I came to Ottawa in 2011. I started my undergrad in journalism, and after a couple of years of, after about a semester of working in that field as a student, I realized it wasn't for me. I didn't like it, so I switched to linguistics for a few years. A lot of mental health things came in the way, and eventually I left Carleton with no intention of returning at all. So, I mean, give it a few years. 2015 is when I started to kind of speculate about my career in social work. And that's when I made the decision, or 2016 is when I made the decision to work towards being accepted to this program. So I returned to school early 2017. I applied for social work. I didn't get in. And when I didn't let that, like, bring me down. Like, yeah, it was very upsetting, very sad, but that was kind of like the motivator for me to continue with my studies. And I found out a few weeks ago that I was accepted this year, so it's a really interesting field, and I'm very much looking forward to I guess decolonizing the field itself, like helping in decolonization. I know, like, this is not one thing that I can take on myself, but if I can help with that perspective, acknowledging the harm that social workers have contributed, that's my end goal, is to be able to kind of like help create a field where we don't silence or oppress indigenous folks. We work with them and we understand our points of view. Like, that's what I want, is social workers to listen to us and to hear us, and for them to understand our ways of being. So I'm a second year standing here at Carleton, and I'm currently on a journey of decolonizing my own ways of life. I am a second generation survivor of the Indian residential school. So my dad, when he was about 8 years old, he was brought to the Indian residential school in Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. And so, like, because of that and other situations, I grew up with a lot of abuse. And that's something I'm currently working on with my family, is to kind of move past that abuse, move past the trauma that was continued. The cycle of abuse really did come full circle, and I am currently trying to break that and make sure that what I do isn't contributing to these horrible systemic abusive cycles. And so a lot of my work lately focuses on social justice issues. I've recently got involved with activism, particularly in indigenous rights, advocating for reproductive justice, and I very much look forward to what I learn in the years to come.
Thank you. My name is Jamaal Jackson Rogers. I'm an artist, father of 5. I've been married to my partner for 17 years, and I guess I'm a community person. I don't know what else to put beside that, but I just involve myself in community as much as I can. My ancestors are part Cherokee, African, of course. My father is from Guyana, South America, and my mother, her family is from the northeastern part of America. I found out that my mother and my mother's ancestors escaped slavery. Anne Marie Jackson escaped slavery with 8 of her children, and arrived in Toronto, and that's what brought my mother's side of the family here. And I only found this out 5 years ago, because being black, knowing your history is very difficult sometimes, especially if you're from the Afro-Caribbean part if you Afro-Caribbean. So yeah, that was a big thing for me. One of her sons, Albert Jackson, became Toronto's first black postman, and he did it through protesting with the government, with the first prime minister, or whatever they call the head chief in Canada. Yeah, the fake boss.
Fake boss.
Yeah, so for me, the work that I do, my purpose, I feel that my purpose is to provide spaces and build community as much as possible. I find that, given that my spiritual practice combined with my ancestry and my mixed ancestry, I find that gathering people and learning from them, but also allowing each to breathe, that has provided a lot of medicine for me. And I think it was Jocelyn that once told me that that our differences is like a medicine, and you know, that has been a great inspiration for me to do what I do. So that's it. Thank you very much for introducing yourself. I felt like I had to go long and breathe out, but I don't know as much. I'm not as knowledgeable as you about myself. So
I've lived many lifetimes. So to put it, you know, shortly, like it's difficult. My name is Kamal Hakim. I come from Somalia. I've been living in Ottawa for 26 years. I'm 30 years old now. I'm a husband of 7 years, a father of 3. I just had my third baby about a week ago. My wife just told me she got pink eye, so I'm over here. I'm trying to catch up to Jamaal, you know what I'm saying? Actually, me and Jamaal are in the same band. We actually have an album dropping this summer, so, you know.
What's it called?
Space Camels. It's like space, but you gotta, it's spelled with an X, so you gotta do something weird to your mouth. You know what I'm saying? This is our way of decolonization, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, the system of language that they set in place, we're like, nah, F that. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta do like a weird little, you know, John Ka-chin to your mouth. You know what I'm saying? Spanish, right? To say it. It sounds like a joke, but it's serious. Yeah, I'm an artist in a couple different disciplines. I started off writing stories. Then I went on to like visual art. You know, that was my first hustle. Used to do assignments for my peers in class for $5 a pop. Moved on to rap and then poetry, and that kind of, you know, completed the formula for what it is that I do now. It was through the arts that I was able to do a couple other things. I was able to start a videography business, a video production business. I've been doing that for 2 years. Was able to get a few contracts with the city of Ottawa and the city of Toronto, and as well as, you know, within my community. I was able to start public speaking, which is, you know, one of the ways I'm here now. I'm a community leader and a spokesperson for the youth, especially within the Somali Canadian family. Man, I'm so much more, and you know what I'm saying. I hate words sometimes because, I mean, I'm a poet, right? I'm a writer, and I hate words because I can't fully express myself, and it is what it is. Decolonization has been something I've been doing all my life, but I've only realized, you know, the word to attribute this hustle to. So I mean, you know, I think Alejandro, I love saying his name. I mean, I'll break out of my accent, you know what I'm saying, just to, say it properly, you know what I'm saying. So, you know, I thank Alejandro for inviting me here. I like this venue, and I like the space here because I thought it was gonna be one of those auditorium type places, and nothing makes me feel like I'm in the Matrix more than that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to take too much more of the little time that we have. Let's begin the discussion, inshallah.
I think, you know, the first question will be, since all of us work with communities,
Yes, sir.
what is the meaning of community from your discipline, from your like culture, and from a personal perspective, or any of those, all of them, whatever you feel?
Yeah.
To answer?
I guess I'll start. So I was I made a few notes, so bear with me. I was going through my Introduction to Social Work textbook, and the meaning of community I got here was a group of people with shared beliefs, usually working towards a common goal. And I noticed that was synonymous with affinity groups. So I don't know, like if a lot of people are involved in community organizing, but they have affinity groups, which is pretty much, like a group of people working towards a common goal. In a more broad sense, the Mi'kmaq word, well, not for community, but what comes to mind is nogama, which is all my relations, and that's a sense of community in a very broad sense. Keep in mind, I'm very I'm still learning. Like I said, I grew up speaking English, and I mean, I was raised as a Christian. I'm learning to kind of like step away from all these like systems that kind of assimilated and colonized me and my family. So I can't speak on behalf of all indigenous people, obviously. I don't even know if I can speak on behalf of the Mi'kmaq people, but this is what I understand. That's all I have to say about that.
For me, community, it's a feeling. I've had the fortunate opportunity to work and experience life and existence in different communities. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that there is a common feeling that happens when you're a part of a community. And whether the community is progressive, healthy, or not, that feeling is that they want and they desire like a bond, right? That and sometimes in that community, working towards that bond can look like different things. So for me, my idea of community is it's no longer based on a certain skin color or religious or spiritual practice. My idea is from that is how do I bond with fellow human beings, and how do I breathe space or create space for fellow human beings to bond, because I've always experienced community in a very difficult with a very difficult slant to it, fighting and conflict, and I felt like there's got to be more to this, because we didn't get here as a existence of people through only the conflict. There's got to be life beyond the conflict. So my idea is speaking words to action to create this bond so that we can come to understand each other more. And there's no like set necessarily goal, like we have to do this, we have to attain this, it's more like we should understand, we should come together to bond, to understand, and then from there, right, the process will reveal itself to what it is that we're trying to achieve in physical and tangible things. That's kind of like what I try to do with community. It's an idea, but really for me, community is a thing that it's lived. It's a lived experience, and it's a feeling inside you.
Thank you. My definition of community continues to evolve. Right now, at this moment, I'm part of a million different communities, and it just depends on what the sample that you're taking, right? I'm Somali, so I'm part of the Somali community. I'm Black, I'm part of the Black community. I'm African, I'm part of the African community. I'm Canadian, I'm part of the Canadian community. I am male, I'm part of the male community. I am married, I'm part of the married. I mean, everything that I am, every aspect of myself, there are other people who share these aspects, and therefore I am in a community with them. And honestly, like, and that's my full answer. However, to expand on it, just because these guys spoke a little bit. For example, community is something that you could be a part of and not know. You see what I'm saying? My father did not know he was Black until he came here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't call Somali food in Somalia. We call it food. You see what I'm saying? And when you come here, then it's like, Somali food. And you can't just call it food. I want food. You know what I'm saying? And then somebody's gonna ask you, well, what kind of food do you want? You know what I'm saying? Unless you're like starving, anything's gonna work, right? But like, so what kind? Well, you want to go on a date? I want to eat. I want to go out to eat. Well, what do you want to eat? You see what I'm saying? In Somalia, you want to go out to eat, you go out and eat. You see what I'm saying? So now take that concept, right, and, you know, expand it, you feel me? Or apply it to different situations, you feel me? It's the same concept, right? You don't call Somali music in Somalia. You call it music, you know what I'm saying? So now we take these ideas and apply them in different ways. Now this only comes from reflection, you feel me? Your understanding only grows with reflection, you feel me? You can't expect to understand things if you're not doing anything, right? There's no proactive you know, action from your part, you know what I'm saying? You can't, you know, sit on a couch and expect, you know, money in your hand. You have to work for it, you know what I'm saying? You can't learn anything if you don't go out and seek knowledge, and you can't understand things if you do not reflect. Community means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I'm still finding it out, so I do not presume that I can even bear forth, you know, bring forth a definition of community, because it continues to evolve. Thank you.
And I think related, like with what you're saying, I would like to ask you, what is the relationship between community and your identity, and with different communities with you work with, and then how that is also changing your identity, or you have a fixed identity and you try to just be yourself. So it's like, how is that process of working with the other, especially when we work with communities that are not our communities, for saying what, I don't know what is my community, but if we work with difference or with the otherness, how is that also changing my identity, or my identity is always the same?
I'll propose two answers that have something to do with each other. Number one is that I heard a quote one time that said, we never change, we only become more of who we're supposed to be. Right? The second part of this, of my answer, is that number one, I'm Muslim. Okay? In my holy book, the Quran, you know, the word of God, he says, we have created you into nations and tribes so that you may recognize one another. And the best of you is the one who is most righteous. You can understand a couple things from this. Number one, how do you judge the righteousness of somebody else? You know, you can't. You know, that's in the person's heart. Therefore, you understand from there that it is outside of your jurisdiction. So now we go back to the first part of this. We created you into nations and tribes so that you may understand one another. Other translations is so that you may know one another. What I took from this is that, you know, I am me and Carolyn is her. And, you know, I have things that she doesn't. And she has things that I don't, right? Now, we come from different places and backgrounds. Therefore, this interaction, right, communication, you know, and sincere communication, right, is supposed to build bridges of understanding so that you can learn what you do not have the years in your life to learn, right? And that she can learn what she doesn't have the years in her life to learn, you know? So as far as the relationship between community and identity, I mean, my first answer to the first question was my definition of community continues to evolve. In the same breath, my definition of my identity continues to evolve. You feel me? These are simple questions, or at least simple, you know, on the face of it, but are super complicated, super nuanced. I think maybe some people may be frustrated with me because I will not present an answer. I will present many, as just from how I see it. And it is only a drop in the ocean of what there is. So, I'm saying pass it on.
Sure, yeah. So I was thinking about like what the relationship between my community and my identity is, and I mean for myself, I've noticed in some communities my identity didn't really fit. There was a lot of conflict. So, self-disclosure, I identify as a queer person. And I grew up in a very Christian family. I identified as a Christian for a lot of my life. But one thing I really had a problem with was the homophobia that was experienced among the queer community. For myself, like I've noticed it with my parents. They would tell me, it's marriage is only between a man and a woman. It should never be between a man and a man or a woman and a woman. And likewise with people along the gender spectrum. This caused a lot of self-hatred within myself, insecurity, and that kind of resulted in a lot of identity crises. On top of that, there was the community of being indigenous, more specifically life on the reservation, this abuse that I'd experienced, not abuse because I didn't come out till I was 23, but kind of hearing this this discrimination and this hate. I didn't know what was okay, what was acceptable. A lot of abuse was normalized on the reservation. You just for me, in conclusion, some of these relationships, some of the relationships did have conflict. Others did kind of go hand in hand, but what I remember is there are some conflict between identity and community, and it's important to kind of make that differentiation and then evaluate what communities are helpful for you and what's going to just perpetuate more harm.
Well, for me, identity, I don't like to use the word too much, identity, because I feel like you run into the labels eventually, right? And I like to think of human beings as multifaceted individuals, complex and beautiful, and sometimes contradictory, right? Sometimes not so beautiful. And so when I think about my identity, I often think of it when someone asks me about that, I think of it, someone just wants to know who I am. It's really what they want to know, who am I as a person? And that's okay. And that's why I said I'm a community person, or I even feel weird sometimes saying I'm an artist, because it's maybe it's my creative mind, but I don't want to be labeled and boxed in, because one day I might be a community person, next day I may be very antisocial, right? I just don't want to be around people or around things, or maybe even around my own self. So, but I understand its importance in context of community, because once you're able to label or give a name or a title to somebody through understanding their identity, you're able to communicate perhaps along the same lines with them, right? And you have there's wider opportunity to form bonds, right? And so for me, when I think about the community and identity, it's kind of strange. And I found people I see people's color, aura, when I see people for the first time, or I meet people. And I used to think I was strange until I found that there are other people who see this too as well. And so, and either the aura is lighter or darker, or sometimes it's really orangey or yellow or bright, gray I've seen. And so for me, that's how I start to recognize people. Not through, and although these things are important, like being queer, right? Or straight, or being Muslim or black. Mind you, I was raised in a very, this is who you are, Jamaal. Your father is involved with the Black Panthers. Your mother's side of the family, we didn't know too much about them, and slavery and so on and so forth. But now, as I grew, I started to realize identities are good for let people call their own identity, but you don't have to answer to someone's perception of what identity is. Okay, allow it to form and mold and grow. So with community, it's important because you're trying to build, right, and come together, but we're multifaceted. So my identity is so multifaceted. Do we even call it that anymore? My identity, and especially because some of the things about me are from being nurtured, right? Some of these things that are about how I think or how I behave, it's because I was taught these things and I grew up around these things, right? Are they my own? Not all of them, and I'm trying to form and formulate that the more I grow. So, but it is important, and I think that it helps in understanding people better when you can think of when you understand people's identity and where they're coming from.
Okay, so I think this is the last question that I have for time.
So,
Oh man, we're just getting into it. Oh.
But it's gonna be a long question.
Oh, yeah.
Nice, I like it.
So I was reading these days.
Use a microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That way,
Yes.
Yeah, ask the people from
there's
the back.
no. Yeah, it's easier for us.
Okay.
Everyone to
Yeah.
So this is called the original circle of representation. So basically, it's how works. This is the structure of politics in Western society. Basically, there is always a group that needs to have some representation. So that group creates and selects a representative. So that's going to be like the spokesperson, or it's going to be like the politician, or the magister, whatever.
Oh, fake boss.
Of the yeah, and it's related. It's so related with what you said before, because actually, you know, like in Latin, the meaning of the word of minister is servant. He's a servant. And that means that ministerium is an institution for service people. You know, but in this circle that I'm going to explain you, basically, this is an act of magic, because this person is going to represent and symbolize the existence of the group. And in one moment, then it becomes a condition for the existence of the group. So this person has the authority on the group. So that's a paradox, because at the beginning we said that the group was selecting this person for represent the will of the group. But somehow
He has authority.
he has authority on the group. So then, you know, like, there are two ways to understand this. And this is an act of faith. You are gonna select that person with faith. But then there are two types of faith. There is unconditional faith, and there is rational faith. So when you have rational faith, then you're gonna have a ministry. There is a servant. But when you have unconditional faith, then you're gonna have the commanding of high officials. And then the domination of its members, imperium. So imperium, what is under we live under empire, is the will of those servants. That is not the will of the people. My point here is, like, every day in our everyday life we also enact this. And sometimes we become also representative. We become spokesperson. We work with communities and then we say, I represent this community. You said, I'm a spokesperson from the youth, especially from the Somali youth. How do we deal with that? You know, like, and how we deal with the power that sometimes we enact in everyday life? Are we conscious of that power? Are we conscious of what, you know, like what we are doing is an act of faith from them, but also sometimes when we speak for them, also it's like kind of like you're speaking from their place. And that's the first question. So how do we deal with that? And the second question is, like, if there are other ways that you think that we could organize ourselves, our society. Is this the only way to work? Or are there other ways?
Well,
Hello? Okay, so for me, let me see here. I believe everybody has power, or has potential, right? Personally. And if you operate from a hierarchical standpoint, you will find that you will miss people's potential. It's much more difficult to miss and receive people's potential in your life. So a seat at the table is a term where you say everybody is invited, we share equally, okay? Nobody is left out when you have a seat at the table. And I like to function within that framework. A seat at the table, the people invest the people invest a certain amount of trust to however many individuals they think is necessary for simply for coordination. Kind of like the male woman, male human, someone who delivers the mail. There we go. Okay, someone who delivers the mail, they're coordinating, okay, products in the community, and it's not an easy job, but in terms of its task and its function, it's simple. Move the mail. And so for someone who's entrusted that position at the table, their entrusting is to make sure that there is cordial, okay, communication and understanding. But it doesn't mean that they have all the answers or provide all the consequences either. I share the same faith as my brother Kamal, and we believe in a when there is a conflict within a community, okay, you must come together and have discussions about the conflict, okay, and you will definitely have an elder or elders there. You will have the young there as well too, and you will have consultation. That's the word. It's in English. I don't know the word in Arabic. It's called beautiful consultations. So when there's a conflict within a community, everybody gets a seat at the table who's involved with the conflict and discusses it, and you come to a consensus beautifully. Meaning that people, when they walk away, they feel that they were respected, heard, and understood. And oftentimes, I know in organized religions, I understand that it's not understood as that, okay? But being a poet, I'm able to see outside of the boundaries of what has been told to me in terms of my own practice. And so I see things a little bit differently. But I don't think that's the structures that we've been taught, even in school and such, there is no, someone's being silenced because there's someone at the top. There's always some level that's going to be silenced, not respected, not heard. And but if you're all sitting and everybody is saying, this is what I do, and this is what I do, and I do this, okay, and there's only one person just making sure that the mic is passed, the rock is passed, the conch is passed, then I find that there's less and less opportunities for someone to be abusive with power, because power is I don't know, power is a very strange thing, it's too much. It's too much for any one person to handle, so you share the power.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So, I just wanted to start off by saying that, the concept of power itself is so colonial, it makes me want to barf. Just a thing, and the thing is, I'm sure, it's just one of those things that we think about and we don't realize that what we're doing is perpetuating colonialism by talking about power and hierarchy. So, the thing with colonialism is we don't realize that we're, contributing to it in our everyday life. even myself, just the way I think, the way I act, it's so colonial that it baffles me as I'm, learning about, decolonizing. As I'm learning to decolonize and I'm learning all these things that I say can contribute to harm, and the thing is we reproduce this knowledge unknowingly. And if we could go back, can we go back to Jocelyn's
circle?
Yeah.
Where is it?
So I don't think that this hierarchical, linear power thing is, the only legitimate way of thinking. Because if we think about, these colonial structures and the fact that it doesn't just happen on Turtle Island, it's happened in other countries. Colonialism is deadly, to say in the least. And the way we need to look at this is, a very healthy, holistic way of looking at it would be the circle. We don't
have someone at the top, because as Jamaal had said, like, people, they don't get heard. So the best way to look at this, and like from what I see, is to be in a circle. Everybody has to be in this circle together. We all sit, we're all a family. When it comes down to it, we are a family. We are brothers and sisters. We are siblings, if I want to be more gender inclusive. And it's important to understand and empathize with indigenous frameworks, especially if you're going into, like for myself, social work, or if you're organizing. And it's important that we don't assimilate indigenous folks, refugees, and people of color. That we understand their points of view, we understand this circle, and that we continue to build on this empathy. That's a very holistic way of looking at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like to use a microphone. So I'm gonna make whoever's in the back, I'm gonna make you work. And forgive me. But the reason why I was scribbling some things down right now, and my apologies to Caroline and Jamaal, is because I thought this was a very important question, number one. And number two, that I needed to formulate my thoughts, because I'm usually just like, wing it kind of guy. All right. I think if I understand correctly, there were two questions. How do you how do you deal with the nature of power, right? And number two, is the circle the only method?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
If that way of organizing, like having this spokesperson of the representative, is the only way, or we can create new ways to, because the whole structure of society is built on that circle. That is a fake circle.
Vaguely, yes.
It's fake.
100%, because now this is, this, like, for me, I'm a child of psychology, right? And this is my, like, true passion outside of post-secondary studies and things like that. My area of interest is the psychology of communication, right? This is the only way that we can relate to each other, right? Okay. As a Muslim, what do you call it? I've always grown up with the idea of an emir, right? Emir in Arabic directly translates to as prince, right? But it also has other connotations. This is a word for leader, right? So in different situations, if let's say me and Jamaal and the other guys are heading out of town to go do a show, right? It's prescribed for us to elect an emir, right? Somebody who is the leader for this, intention here. You know what I mean? This, creates a bit of a structure, right? Now, here's where it kind of gets a little bit nuanced, okay? In the Quran, right? Now this is so I'm a Muslim, and this is a lot of my understanding comes from the Quran. Ain't no shame. I'm proud. In the Quran, we are told, okay, we're told that you must always obey your leader. You know what I'm saying? You must always obey the law of the land. As a Muslim, I live in a land where Islam is not the governing body, right? Therefore, if there are some things that happen that are legislated, and are allowed that go against my religion, that actually takes second place. I'm supposed to follow the rules over here, right? Now, rules, is better than anarchy. You know what I mean? Because that kind of highlights, the underside of power. You see what I'm saying? Power without structure, right? This is how crimes happen. You feel me? So, now when it comes to, how, do you navigate, through power, right? Whether it's electing a leader or electing an emir, right? Whether it's government or just, going on a road trip. You feel me? I have thought about this many times, and I continue to think about it. I like what Jamaal said right now about having a seat at the table. For me to have a seat at the table is enough. I don't need to be the head of the table. I just need my voice to be heard, right? Now, in many different situations, I feel like I do lead, even though I am not the leader, the official leader. You know, as long as I can, you know, voice my opinions, and I feel like my opinions come from a place of rationality, and I always put it up and leave it open to, you know, scrutiny and discussion and whatnot. You feel me? Because ultimately I'm after truth. I'm not after ego, right? I'm after truth. So I have to always be willing to have my truth, you know, challenged, scrutinized, criticized, right? And truth has its own power. Its power is intrinsic. You feel me? Therefore, if I am sincerely about truth, right, then I don't need to do anything extra to protect it. I don't. I can put it up if it withstands all of the criticism and scrutiny, right? And I have, you know, subscribed to it, then that power is my power. You feel me? Okay, so I feel like I can lead without being in the position of a leader, of leadership. You feel me? Now we all have that power, all of us. It requires awareness.
Hi.
Yes, yes, I love it. Wow.
Yes, Uncle Lord, the beer's coming.
Hi.
Now to address the second point of power, and I'm going to try to move through this quickly, is sometimes you don't have the time, okay? You don't have the time to go through the correct channels, right? To respect the structure of power. If there is, you know, if my brother Jamaal is crossing the street, okay, and there is a Mack truck heading towards him, I'm not gonna take a vote, right? I'm not going to say, hey, brother Jamaal, listen, do you got time for me to holler at you about a very important matter? I'm not gonna do that. Out of love and out of instinct and out of the compassion, I will grab this man's arm as roughly as possible and pull him out of the way. And I don't care if he like scrapes his knee. I don't. Because I actually saved him from a bigger, you know what I'm saying, trouble. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So now who decides this? You had to make that decision. And you had to circumvent all protocols. You had to circumvent the system that was set in place. You know, you had to circumvent and function outside of, you know what I'm saying, the socially acceptable way of communicating. You feel me? Right. So now when you add this aspect to the conversation about power and how we relate to it, then it becomes nuanced. It becomes complicated. There is no right answer. It now depends on a judgment call, your judgment, and ultimately, you know, out of your humanity in which we all share. You feel me? So, David and Goliath, right? Goliath being the system, David being the one individual, right? We can all, you know, defeat it, right? If we are sincere enough. Now, the second part of the question was the nature of the circle. You feel me? The number one thing that I want to speak on is perspective, okay? Now, Jocelyn is sitting on this side of the table, and I'm sitting on this side of the table. If we had a Coca-Cola can right in the center, Jocelyn would see the label of Coca-Cola. I would see the list of ingredients. I swear to God that this can has the list of ingredients. She don't see that, but she says, I swear to the creator that it says Coca-Cola. Now peep this, we're both correct, right? Now the nature of the circle here is in order for me to adopt her perspective, it requires work on my part to get up from here and travel to here to see what she sees. Now, if we're not willing to put in that work, okay? Again, what did I say in the beginning earlier, whatever BS I was talking about? You don't get knowledge if you're just sitting on the couch. You have to actually go seek it. You see what I'm saying? And you cannot adopt another perspective or even hope to understand anything if you are not willing to leave your position, whether it be a castle, you know, the trench, you know, your apartment, your neighborhood, right? Your ideology. You know, if you're not even secure enough in your ideology to be able to leave it for a second, you know what I'm saying? I mean, how secure are we really? The nature of the circle, right, is it requires work, okay? It requires work to be able to fully realize its potential. I hate the word potential. It's synonymous with the word tomorrow, right? Tomorrow never comes. Potential never comes, because once potential is reached, it is not potential no more, it is reality. Once tomorrow comes, the nature of it, alchemy happens. It becomes today. It becomes right now, right? And if we do not live in the right now, are we really living, right? There was a quote I heard, and I'm gonna butcher it. I don't care, but I felt what it said. And it's like, if you worry about the problems of tomorrow or the grief of the past, all you are doing is using up the strength of today. You see what I'm saying? And you're not gonna fix tomorrow's problem. All you are doing is draining yourself of the strength to handle today. Out of the ramblings that I have, you know what I'm saying, put you guys through, take whatever it is that I said, whatever it is that Carolyn said, whatever it is that Jamaal said, couple it with the questions that Alejandro asked us, and also with your own perspective and your willingness to step outside of your position and walk to the next part of the circle. All of these things, and you can make informed decisions. You can have an informed outlook and just a more nuanced and detailed perspective. We're going from 2D to 4K by doing this, right? Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, so we have, I think, like 10 minutes because the space is reserved. But to close the circle, I think it will be good if some of you want to have some questions or some like doubts or commentary, and be equal and coming back to where we start.
Don't be bashful.
I'll say thank you for organizing this, and it was a pleasure.
Gracias mucho.
To hear the different perspectives, and it's also something to go back home and reflect and digest. And there are so many things kind of swirling in my mind right now. Yes, okay, this is cool, this is really cool. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming.
I just want to give a comment.
Yeah.
Going back to that Waskapamataso and the circle way of being, I think it's very good to travel. Our people tell us to travel to other people's homes. And, you know, we live in a vibrant city made up of all kinds of sacred spirit beings. And we need to put fear aside, because in our language, you know, we don't have these words that the white man has, you know, like queen, king, prime minister, president, chief. because those are made up words. Like chief Okamahan is a made up word. It's a colonial word that got translated. It's not original to our mother tongue. So that institution of hierarchy does not live there. What's important about the circle way of knowing is relationships. So we always say Nichi, my friend, which is singular. Nichiwak, my friends, which is plural. Nichiwaganak, the ones I journey with, my friends that I journey with. So it's important that we visit each other. I've been at Jamal's studio several times, and I've been so grateful with what I've learned. And go to people's houses, wherever that is, whatever that may look like. It doesn't mean a house. Learn about their families, eat their food, learn about their language, learn about their spirituality. I've been very, very fortunate to be welcomed, because I have family who follow Islam. And what I've noticed is there's a similarity. That's what you're going to learn. Like we honor our moon time in from our nation. And when I go into their lodge, their mosque, the women sit, if you're on your moon time, they sit in the back. And I thought, oh my God, that's so much like ours. They smudge similar to the way we smudge. They cleanse, they use water like the way we use water. Go and find the similarities. And don't be afraid of the differences, like as Jamal pointed out, that's not our way to be afraid of our differences, embrace them. And the colonial world it's caused a lot of destruction on Turtle Island. Remember, this is Turtle Island. This is our home. And everyone else is a guest here. And be a guest in a good way, because you know what? I will not tolerate bullshit no more. That's not going to happen. So this is what I'm saying. Let's learn to be friends. Let's learn to be brothers and sisters and to journey well on this journey. And when we're not doing so hot, be kind enough to remind the other person that we're not being kind enough. And put that, I'm telling you, I've had my moments where my own children was like, you're bullshitting. It's like, okay, don't be afraid, be humble. So I like to say thank you to Nijishan, my friend that I journey with, Alejandro, and his family, his partner, and of course my brothers and my sister. I like to tease her to shit.
I do it back.
Oh yeah, she does. She does it back. So.
I do it back.
Thank you so very much for standing in circle and sitting in circle with us. And bringing your hearts here, in a good hard way of being. That's where strength lies, right? And I want to add, a lot of these concepts in the Western world, English is like a disability to me. Honestly, it's a disability. Start learning, what I love about meeting new people and learning their languages. How do you say this in your language? And I find out all kinds of things. How do you say respect in your language? What is it about respect? From this tribe, that tribe of all continents. And I learn all kinds of fantastic things and a new way of thinking. So broaden your horizons. Get out of your box. Get out of the hierarchy in the linear thinking. Miigwech.
And just last thing is please thanks Maeve and Dawn that they shared the same.